So we're going to talk about biological change over time, and I'm going to break this up into small bite-sized pieces, allowing for question and answers afterwards in between. And there's no way I could cover and do justice to the theory of evolution, like 1 hour, 2 hour lecture, even in a whole week. But we'll just cover different little vignettes, different bit, and try to cover it enough so that it makes sense to you and you can sort of intuit and see what's going on. So despite what you may have been told as a Christian, evolution is a theory in the scientific sense. And as Dale Patika mentioned, some of the best things we know the most about are theories in science. So it's well-tested explanatory framework, supported by a large body of experimental evidence. It makes accurate predictions, and it has not yet been falsified through experimentation. Those are all things that are true of all well-supported theories. Theory of the atomic theory, the periodic table of the elements, gravitational theory, theories of the electromagnetic spectrum. Anyway, this for some reason, believers are threatened by this one. And this is my field, biology. I'm a biologist. So I have to just sort of grin and bear it at church, when the pastor makes a statement that I know is just wrong. And sort of is what gave me the idea to pastors progress in their understanding of theory. My goal for the week is really for you to learn some science and not to know that it's not going to threaten fate. Challenging questions to consider. Did God create present diversity of life by using special creation or evolution? Or some combination? And Christians do often think that God did step in and maybe the first cell, the first life, God nudged it along. I often wonder if you have the view that God steps in periodically to help with his finger, metaphorically doing something. What is he doing the rest of the time? And for me, I find it just more wonderful to think that this is a process that's something that happened in the past, but still happening today. So what does the public think? This is an interesting slide. So the public's views on evolution haven't changed much over time. So I'm going to just spend a minute or two reading these. This is just up to 2004, but it's continuing today, and it hasn't changed much. So I haven't bothered to change it. It's pretty much the same today. All right, so beliefs, 3 different beliefs here. Creationist, theistic evolution, naturalistic evolution. And another word for theistic evolution that is used by Biologos and by me, careful, does anybody know the other term? Evolutionary creation. All right. So evolutionary creation is emphasized creation aspect of the idea. It is creation, but through the mechanism of evolution. The creationist view. And so here are the different statements. Creationist, God created man pretty much in his present form at one time within the past 10,000 years. That sounds right to me as a of that view. And then theistic, man has developed over millions of years from less advanced forms of life that guided this process, including man's creation. I don't find that to be as satisfying of a statement of it, but it's sort of definitely not this and not that. So developed through pre-existing forms. Naturalistic evolution, man has developed over millions of years from less advanced forms of life. God had no part in the process. All right, so what you'll find is that basically about 38% theistic evolution. Creationist, 45%. Steady over time. And then naturalistic evolution, a smaller amount. So this is not, this evolutionary creation is a significant group, but this, which personally I find less supported by science, is very, very stable over time. It's kind of interesting. So, and this is in the U.S., right? So, in the United States, yeah. So the trend is to stay in that mode. Okay, now here's an interesting ranking of the acceptance of evolution in the US compared to other countries. At the top, Iceland, look at number 2. Denmark, all right, the land of Dr. Usser. Maybe it's because of him. No. He has a big impact. But it is probably not a coincidence that the major genome center in the world is in that country. So adults were asked to respond to the statement, human beings, as we know them, developed from earlier species of animals. And you have Denmark, Sweden, France, Japan, UK, Norway, Belgium. At the bottom, we have Turkey. And so what you want is, if you're a biologist, you want more people to accept the idea that our physical nature came from earlier species. That basically, we are on the tree of life. We're part of the tree of life that we've been talking about this week. Okay, so true, not sure, false, Turkey, Iceland. And I'll remove the little bar. Norway, Belgium, Spain, Netherlands, Hungary, Luxembourg, Ireland, Slovenia, Finland, Czech, Estonia, Portugal, Malta, Poland, Croatia, Romania, Greece, Bulgaria, Lithuania, Latvia, Cyprus, United States.
Interesting that you don't have no Latin American countries in there.
I don't know. I didn't do it, man. Sure? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. No Latin American countries, that's an oversight. Are you sure?
Well, if you look at it.
Well, maybe they're below Turkey. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah.
Turkey that way, maybe because a lot of Muslims have the same ideas as Christians.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure the reasons. I mean, I can speculate only on the reasons in the United States, mainly because I'm experienced here, and I know there's a lot of powerful forces at work to confuse the public, in my opinion. And there is some of that in the Muslim world as well. Anyway, it probably has to do with schools, curriculum, things like this. Really formatively help people in their younger years form these ideas. I don't want to belabor this point, but it just seems that you would think that we would be higher. I mean, I would hope as a biologist, but it's possible that if you have a different view, you might view this as a point of pride. That look, we're standing firm for the Bible in the United States. I can see that being another alternative interpretation of this. But as a biologist, anyway, it's dismaying. So the question of how created cannot easily be answered by direct observation. Those who believe in special creation generally hold creation as something God did in the past, not something he's doing today. And while we observe small-scale evolutionary change directly, large-scale changes require immensely long periods of time. So this is the idea of micro versus macroevolution. Most everybody will agree in microevolution. You almost can't ignore that. It's right in front of your face to see. One of the vignettes we'll have in this workshop is the idea of a species. We'll talk about what it means. That comes up in conversation quite often. I think that'll help you. So we have the two extremes. We have the creation and the evolutionary view. And of course, I hold that a believer can believe in the evolutionary process and still be true to the Bible and have a view of Scripture. What would each of these two hypotheses predict concerning similarities between diverse species presently and over time, fossils and things, geographical dispersion of species, say in Australia, New Zealand, mainlands, areas, islands, oceanic islands, past species that do not exist today, extinct species, past species that appear to be transitional between species, vestigial traits. These are things like vestigial traits, things like our appendix, really small, insignificant. It's much larger in herbivores like rabbits and things. They have this enormous organ there, which full of bacteria. Genetic similarities in genes having known functions and portions of DNA having no known function. Pseudogenes, we'll talk about what those are. We'll have a little segment on that in a little while. And the structure of the chromosomes, we'll have a segment on that as well. So I believe these where's my thing? These will have different predictions based on the two views. So I'm going to go to this slide. No, not that one. So genetic evidence is absolutely probably the most fruitful way of looking at relationships. As you saw, what Ussery was doing with those trees, it's amazing. Now, genetics unknown to Darwin. He didn't know that the mechanism of inheritance. In fact, many people, including Darwin, would have assumed a blending of the genes. They would blend. Now, do you recall who came up with the idea of the genes not blending? It was the P-man, okay? Gregor Mendel. So, and then later, as we learned yesterday, eventually people figured out the gene was found in the DNA. And we have 2 chromosomes, 2 copies of every gene, one from mom, one from dad, and separate out, and they separate out during the formation of egg and sperm, and then they come back together and form a new organism. So personal genome projects, this is a little out of date. Interpreting those personal genomes is something we talked about more yesterday. So here's a little review of some of Darwin's material. So when different populations of species become reproductively isolated from each other and adapt to different ecological niches or different ways of places, mountain, valley, different temperature environments and so on, the idea is that eventually they become separate species. And so over time, you have different lineages. These kind of trees are similar, but not necessarily the exact same thing as the genetic trees that we can look at just by looking at the number of nucleotide differences. But you would predict that there would be some connection and that they would actually be similar, and that the ones that are more distant in time would have more mutations.
So a liger will be an adaptive radiation?
A what would be?
Liger?
A lion-tiger hybrid?
Yep.
Nope.
They
Nope.
move when they adapted and they...
We're going to get into like the idea of 2 extant species interbreeding, and we will talk a little bit about that. What we're talking about here is a population which becomes separated into 2 populations in space or in time, just physically somehow removed from each other.
Right, so one of the examples was the lakes in Africa.
Right. There are many examples. New lakes that form with land in between, or even continents. Hold the thought. Let me just write down your questions. We'll have time to cover them. So here's a sketch that we saw earlier of Darwin's notebook, and you can see this. This is sort of what he was onto. This is the idea that he was onto. He, this tree does not. We'll cover this again when we talk about species. It works for some kinds of organisms, but it really doesn't work well for bacteria, because bacteria are sharing their DNA. Didn't he say something like a third or so of the genes that coli have are shared in common, but the rest is... I have some even more extreme statements like that. The rest is all these other genes that are picked up. So bacteria, not so much, but it doesn't mean the bacteria have not evolved. It just means that the mechanism of this lineage doesn't work for organisms that have DNA from the environment. It's going to mess up the picture, right? It's not going to be as easy to map that. All right.